Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining this webinar. My name is Jerry Mincer from Smart Growth America. Thank you again for joining. We're going to be talking about some lessons learned from our small-scale manufacturing and place-based economic development project. You're going to hear from 3 communities about their efforts on small-scale manufacturing and the progress that they're making in each of their communities. A little bit about Smart Growth America. You're seeing our mission and vision on your screen right now. We empower communities through technical assistance, advocacy, and thought leadership, and we're a national nonprofit. We partnered on this project with Recast City and with Ilana Proust, who's going to be joining us on this webinar. And this webinar was funded by a cooperative agreement, a grant from the Economic Development Administration, and we greatly appreciate their support on this work. For this project, we had several objectives focused around small-scale manufacturing and specifically place-based economic development, making strategic land use decisions to enhance and improve local economic revitalization, helping businesses and other stakeholders, government, developers, and community members collaborate on these issues, and importantly, fostering environments to support entrepreneurs and homegrown industries and creating jobs at a variety of education and skill levels. I'm going to turn it over to Ilana Proust from Recast City to talk a little bit about the project, about the site visits that we've made over the past few years, and the communities that we worked with. Ilana?
Thank you, Jerry. So thank you for joining us today. As Jerry said, my name is Ilana Proust, and I am the founder and CEO of the company Recast City. We work with communities to create vibrant economies where small-scale manufacturing thrives and Main Street comes to life. Over the last 3 years, through this grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, we had a chance to work with Smart Growth America and these 10 communities that you see in front of you through 2 competitive rounds that we ran. And this last year, the 2019 cities, there was 1 community selected from each of the EDA regions. One of the exciting things that came out of this is being able to work with different communities to both see who they have in their small-scale manufacturing community. As you know, small-scale manufacturing is any business that is producing a tangible good, and it doesn't matter if it's hot sauce, handbags, or hardware, but ones that are smaller that can fit within our corridors, that can fit on our main streets, that can be an asset back into neighborhoods. And so we worked with these communities to make sure they were identifying these businesses, identifying a diversity of business owners within their community to ensure that the economic opportunity was inclusive of every population there, and also looking at where it could go, because where we make economic investments and where we help businesses get their toehold in a community really creates multiple benefits around the energy and the vibrancy around that place and who has that space over the long haul. Today you're going to hear from, as Jerry said, 3 of our different communities who are a part of this. The first presenters will be from Knoxville, Tennessee. Then we will hear from a leader from Macomb Vizay neighborhood in Lafayette, Louisiana. And lastly, from a leader of a corridor in Columbia, Missouri as well. And in each case, they're going to be giving you an overview of their project, but also really what they've been able to implement to date and how we've been able to support them. And then at the end, we'll also take questions. You can enter questions at any time you want in the box that says chat. And at the end, I'll pull questions from that chat list and ask them of our technical assistance recipients. And if you have a question specific for a community, please feel free to note that in the question as well. So first, for our first speaker, we have 2 speakers to speak about Knoxville, Tennessee. First, we have Terrence Carter, who's the Vice President for Economic and Business Development at the Knoxville Urban League. And we also have Jim Biggs, who's the Executive Director of the Knoxville Entrepreneurship Center in Knoxville. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ilana. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to share with what we've been doing. So our hope today was to provide an update on some of the recommendations that have been made through the the work that Recast City and SGA did in partnership with Knoxville. I'm happy to totally go off script and answer questions for folks or get onto some tangents if they're interested, so please don't hesitate to shoot us questions, either now or I guess during the Q&A session. So we went back and actually, TC and I reviewed the report, which was a couple of years old at this point, to see how we were doing, and we were excited to see that there's been some pretty good progress here. And one of the sort of salient things that came out of that review was a sentence that I sort of glommed onto, which says that ultimately the goal here is not simply to promote small-scale manufacturing, but to create a new kind of place in which small-scale manufacturing anchors an inclusive and resilient community. And I think that's really starting to describe Knoxville, and hope to show you some of the ways that that's happening. So there were basically 3 recommendations in the report. The first of which was to encourage Knoxville to establish a clear vision for Knoxville as the maker city for real estate development in a particular sub-district of the community that's called the Magnolia Warehouse District. And as you can see on the screen, we took that quite literally. So one of the things that we were in the process of doing and has been very successful is we actually rebranded our initiative, but to some extent rebranded the city because it's been very widely adopted. We are now calling ourselves the Maker City. And this logo appears in maker shops. It is stamped on some of their packaging material, stamped on some of the tags that they use for retail displays. And it's also become something that people reference and identify as sort of what Knoxville is all about. Knoxville has struggled to have an identity, and so we're delighted to see people actually resonating with makers and with the Maker City as something that they feel proud of as a way to describe what we're doing here. So the branding has been a great sort of short-term outcome of where we were and where we're headed. The other sort of serendipitous thing that was going on was that Knoxville's zoning ordinance, it turns out, had not been updated in roughly 50 years. And when you see what the process looks like, you can completely understand why nobody wants to touch that stuff for 50 years at a time. But it was a great opportunity for us to look at what the possibilities were to be intentional about mixed-use spaces in the course of doing that. And so over the last couple of years, there has been a lot of ongoing dialogue that we called Recode Knoxville. And the idea was to completely rewrite the zoning, and in particular, to think about a chance to adopt some modern standards that support continued development, redevelopment in the city in a manner that uses resources efficiently and builds a strong, sustainable, walkable community. And more specifically to the maker community was the addition of an industrial mixed-use zoning district to the ordinance. And I put the definition that the council adopted here so that you guys will have it when you look at it later. You don't necessarily need to absorb it all now. But this district accounts for about 15% of all industrial zoning within the city and is primarily located in the Magnolia Avenue Warehouse District that was the subject of the report that SGA did. And the overarching goal here is to provide opportunities where someone can potentially live, work, and sell out of the same building. And so it's an exciting evolution for Knoxville. And if you look at it, all of the stuff, I don't think we're screen sharing, so you can't see my pointer, but all of the stuff in sort of that light purple that's in the center of the screenshot is that mixed-use zoning district that correlates with the Magnolia Avenue Warehouse District. So we're excited to see what happens. This is a very recently adopted zoning proposal, and so it's in its infancy, but I think is going to be transformative for that area. in concert with that, the city has also been looking to actually make it a more walkable and livable area. And so there has been a great emphasis on streetscape projects and on making it more inviting for residents. And TC, I don't know if you have a few things to say about that, because your building is right over there.
And I'll piggyback on something you said earlier in terms of our identity. We've always joked about being the best kept secret in the country, and to a great extent that's absolutely true, particularly from the standpoint of the resources that we have, particularly the natural resources that coincide with all of these things that are going on that Jim just mentioned. But I think the smart thing that we have been able to do here in Knoxville is to leverage a lot of different programs and initiatives that sort of feed off of each other. So if you take the Streetscapes project and the location of those with the proximity of the Magnolia Avenue Warehouse District, and then you take the initiative in terms of the Maker City, and you layer that with the recoding that's going on, they all support and complement what we're trying to do with regard to our city as a whole. And we will no longer be the secret city, if you will, with a whole bunch of natural resources and efforts underway to be more inviting with regard to mixed uses in terms of our land development. And it's just an exciting time to see all these things kind of come to an apex, if you will, all at the same time. And as you mentioned, Jim, we are literally sitting in the middle of the Magnolia Avenue Streetscape project, having just completed our own $2.6 million renovation to our own facility. So you can see the energy and you can feel the excitement in the air, and you can see all the momentum that's being built. In fact, we've got several companies now that are looking at the area. We've got somebody currently renovating an old mixed-use building into a coffee shop right in the middle of all the construction that's going on right now. And then we got great buildings that are just primed for reuse versus demolition and building new. So we are trying to take advantage of our existing structures without having to recreate a new character, because these buildings already have lots of character themselves, even empty, but we certainly do not want them to be empty. And I'm going to just mention the 1200 McCullough building that Jim was going to mention and probably go into a little bit more detail. That's a city-owned building just east of the warehouse district that's now going to be a co-working space for artisans and people that are creative, and basically try to start that as one of the very first few projects in terms of this district. And then we've had some other developments where people have come in and used another thing that we have is a facade program, where we intentionally look at the buildings from an exterior perspective and try to support entrepreneurs in their efforts to redevelop these buildings. So the city's investment with regard to that is one other thing that's also going on in these same areas. So we're excited and glad to be part of all this excitement that's going on in our town.
Yeah, thank you, TC. And it's actually a great segue into the second part of those recommendations that we were talking about, which is the opportunity for continued real estate development in those districts that focuses on the maker community. And this slide that you're seeing right now is actually a slide that I had in a presentation for EDA several years ago. So back in 2017, when we were just briefly recapping some of the recommendations out of the report. And what you can see here is part of that Magnolia Area Warehouse District that was undergoing transformation. In the foreground was a building that it was and is still a maker studio, although it's changed hands and is now a different maker that's using it. In the background is a mixed-use residential and retail apartment building. And importantly, it's owned by a company you can see there that's named Dewhurst Properties. David Dewhurst has done a lot of work reconditioning and repurposing old buildings into great community spaces. And so the building in the middle that said coming up next, we weren't sure what was going to happen with that, but that was a city-owned building that TC just mentioned at 1200 McCullough. The city was going to surplus it and sell it off, and we convinced them that they should include in the RFP a recommendation that it become a space for makers or creatives in some way. And they did. And they had a couple of unsuccessful efforts to get bids on it until Dewhurst stepped back in. And we're excited to say that what is coming next was something that we really hoped we would see. So rather than it being residential apartments, or rather than it being scraped, which was really what we were mostly expecting, Dewhurst is going to turn this into a creative building. And it's going to be an artist and maker studio with discrete studio spaces and also gallery and kitchen space available to both the public and also to the people who are renting space in there. The City Council has not yet approved this, but the attorneys have submitted it for approval, and we will, of course, kill all of them if, in fact, they decide not to approve it. Just kidding, I'm not threatening harm, but I would be very disappointed and surprised if this was not actually something that comes through, and would be a great example of the kind of thing that can happen when cities are encouraged to think about makers more intentionally. And it's not just this one building where we're seeing developers take an interest in building in some kind of maker and creative community that will be both a magnet for that building and also a tenant for what the people are building. What you see there is actually one of the biggest buildings that used to be in Knoxville. It's called the Standard Knitting Mill. And back in its heyday, this is what put Knoxville on the map as a maker community, because we were known as the underwear capital of the world, I am proud to say. Over time, this building became a signature of the sort of industrial power of Knoxville. Over the last 10 or 15 years, that has completely disintegrated. And so the building has declined precipitously and basically was just sitting there unused. It continues to be one of the biggest places in Knoxville. It's over 450,000 square feet. But today, unfortunately, it looks like that. And people were despairing that, one, we were going to lose an old building, two, we were going to lose some great potential. And until recently, I didn't really have any hopes that things would change. But in just the last 3 months, because of two things: one, the zoning changes that were anticipated, and two, the fact that it's in an opportunity zone, some new developers have stepped up. And so we are looking at this as potentially the next great mixed-use space, similar to maybe a Midtown Concourse in Memphis, some of the other places where you have retail, restaurants, but also creative spaces, event spaces, maker spaces. And if you see in the foreground, we also are actually already using it outside. So about a year and a half ago, a group came in and asked if they could turn the soil that was outside into a community garden. And now today, that garden feeds about 600 people a month through a program that they've developed. So exciting to see what happens, and I think another testament to the fact that when you're intentional about redevelopment and including the makers, good things can happen. The final one that I would throw at you is also still in the works, but we're hopeful about. On the left is the existing Holiday Inn in Knoxville, and it is in desperate need of a makeover. On the right is the proposal that has come about in the last month or so from some developers who came in. They found the property because they heard about the Maker City, and they reached out to us to ask if there was a way that they could partner with us to redevelop part of it. What they're trying to do, some of you guys may be familiar with, is similar to something like DC has with the Shop Made in DC. So they want to put in maker retail that focuses on locally made goods into the redeveloped Marriott, and then also potentially create a maker showcase in there that would incorporate things like technology from Oak Ridge National Lab, which is right in our backyard, and also the University of Tennessee. So if it comes through, another exciting way that we're working with developers and that the the recommendations out of SGA have been really an accelerant in terms of our ability to find spaces like that. The last thing that I will mention briefly that was a recommendation about the community in general was to partner with local organizations to make this a more inclusive community. And in particular, to make sure that people from underrepresented communities were being intentionally brought into the fold of the maker community and provided opportunities to be successful. So one of the ways that we have been doing that is through an annual summit that we do called the Maker City Summit. The Maker City Summit is our annual sort of gathering of makers to try and help people become better at the business of making. And this year, the entire focus of the summit was actually on diversity and inclusion and in making the community a more welcoming place for everybody who wants to be a maker. And I think, at least anecdotally, we've heard it was the best summit that we have been able to put on, and we have been encouraged to continue that in a variety of ways, one of which is that we also teach a class here called Etsy Craft Entrepreneurship in partnership with Etsy. And in the coming year, we're going to be rolling out that class as a Spanish language class as well. And so, I think our efforts to be intentional there are starting to broaden both the definition of who is a maker and, more importantly, who feels like they are a part of the maker community that we've built. And so that was our update from 2017, and I will look forward to answering questions when we get a chance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you, Terrence. The focus that you guys have brought to this and the purposefulness that you have brought to your work is really exciting to see. We're now going to jump over to talk about Columbia, Missouri, and we're going to hear from Carrie. Carrie is the Executive Director of The Loop, which is a community improvement district along a major corridor next to the downtown in Columbia, Missouri. Carrie, take it away.
Thank you, Alana. So this is exciting to talk about. We finished up our site visit 6 months ago, and when the Smart Growth America team left, they left us with a long to-do list of projects. They also left us with assurances that we didn't have to do it all at once. Well, we kind of threw that assurance to the wind. We had so much community excitement as part of this site visit. What we wanted to do was start doing projects as soon as we could so that we could just harness this excitement from people in the community. So I'm the first to say we probably bit off more than we can chew. But the two secrets to how we started this off was, one, we realized that we had a lot of projects bubbling on the street that we could add a manufacturing or a maker's component to, which was good. It got us off the ground more quickly. And the second thing we do is we realized we needed more Alana. We brought Alana back on for 10 weeks of her expertise and her homework assignments, and we know that we couldn't have done that alone. So it really helped us jumpstart the project. So the three things we really focused on, the first one here is we needed to activate the street, and as you can see, that's a street that really needs activating. Fortunately, we had a corridor plan that was already completed and approved, and one of the first ideas that the plan gave us was to activate a vacant lot with a pop-up park. So one Saturday, a couple weeks after the site visit, we had 120 volunteers come out, and they actually built us a park. It was amazing. It was local builders. It was local makers. So now we had a space on the street where there was some activity, but what it also gave us was an opportunity to showcase events dealing for makers or artisans. So there's a whole host of events that we're doing, a lot that involve children, and in particular children who live in the surrounding neighborhoods. So we did things like paint and plants for kids and their parents. One very successful event we do every month is our STEAM Bus Brunch. So it's a Saturday. Our public schools has a refurbished school bus that they do STEAM projects out of. So we roll the bus up to the park. We serve the parents mimosas and fresh, locally roasted coffee, and the kids make things. So they do woodworking, they play with robots, they do VR, there's Legos, of course, jewelry making, and it's a really good chance to really bring in people from the surrounding neighborhoods, but also highlight the makers who are still children. And then the final thing we did just recently was a maker fair at the park. We had it, and this is, I got to tell you, it was so busy. This was the only picture I managed to take, and this was during the setup. We had about 15 makers ranging from woodworking to computer games to textiles and jewelry. It was a 2-hour event. We had about 200 people come, and everyone was thrilled. People were buying things. The makers and the artisans were excited. So we're going to start doing this again throughout the year so that we can really make our street, the Loop, a place where there's a home for all sorts of makers and artisans. So that was activating the street. The second thing we did was really look to some catalytic projects on the street. So we have a community college on the street. They were active in the planning process for the site visit and during the site visit. They have a mechanical engineering lab called their Mechatronics Lab, which is hugely popular. So as we were doing the site visit and the planning, they decided they would like to double the space of their Mechatronics Lab. And what they decided to do was add a maker space onto that. So they applied for a state grant. They got just under $1 million. And so part of what they'll be expanding on the street is a 3,000 square foot maker space. Woodworking, laser cutters, a lot of textiles, so sewing machines, embroidery machines, a lot of things for the women that we talk to as well. It's not just kind of the wood shop sort of things. They are also talking with our friends at EDA for additional funding for some of the more expensive equipment. So this is something that's going to open in July. It will be for their students, and it will also be membership-based for people in the community. And we do have a lot of these artisans who need space and equipment to scale up. We have the Missouri Development Council, Missouri Small Business Development Center, which is really hidden at the University of Missouri campus. They want to relocate next door to this new makerspace so that they can help incubate and counsel not just the students that go through the program, but a lot of the community members who use the makerspace. So that was exciting, and it was directly a result of the site visit. The second catalytic project is a shared commercial kitchen, and I might be burying the lead here. My board, well, let me back up. We have an old hospital on the street owned by the university. It's been transformed into office buildings, but in the basement is an old hospital kitchen, and it is built to last. So we talked to the university. We would like to open a commercial kitchen there. They are giving it to us at a lease rate that is embarrassingly low because they're very supportive of what we're trying to do. And you can flip to the next slide, although the kitchen is no great shakes. They really, it's solid. We do not have to do a lot of build out. We have to get some extra equipment. But we think we can open this pretty quickly. My board is dedicating funds to it, and just about an hour ago, our Regional Economic Development Council just approved funding for the space as well. So we are, fingers crossed, hoping to get it open by the beginning of the year. this was something that Alana did help tremendously on in terms of giving us comparables, kitchens that we could research, helping us with mission and vision. We really want to lower the barriers for people that open a restaurant, and particularly people without access to a lot of funding sources or family wealth. That's usually women, people of color. We also, I just spoke to an organization that deals with recent immigrants who maybe lost certification in their country. They have skills and they would like to open food-based businesses as well. So we're super excited about this. We also have a first client, and that's the next slide, a local coffee roaster that was part of our site visit again. He was sharing space. The person who was sharing space would need that space back. So he wants to locate in our kitchen. He has his roaster, his table, his shelving, all of his equipment. So all he needs is a hood. So we can slot him into a space in our kitchen. It means we don't have to buy the equipment, and we already have a high-profile client for our kitchen. If we do future makers fairs, what we'd like to do is, along with the artisans, we'd like to have food producers there. So it's a way to highlight the commercial kitchen client. So those are the two big projects we've decided to start with. The third thing we looked at is development and zoning. We have a new zoning code, but we still have some recommendations that we put together with the help of Alana in terms of how to adjust the small-scale manufacturing artisan industry definition to better suit what people are doing. One thing Alana helped us with was development templates. So we put together about 5 templates for different types of small-scale manufacturers, and what we'd like to do is run them through our planning department so they can take a look at them and highlight some problems, and so we can work out the kinks before an actual developer is spending money with an architect and spending money with attorneys to really get it through the city. So this is an example of what the package we are putting together for the city looks like. So this is chocolate production plus retail sales. We took a vacant building on the street. Alana gave us a floor plan that the planning department can look at and evaluate. And then we took comparable businesses from other cities and put together pictures so people can really understand what it looks like. So we really hope that that's a way to kind of lower the barriers for developers who want to develop spaces geared towards small-scale manufacturing. We do have a redefined definition of that, and we've got a commitment from the city manager to help us with that change. Our idea is we're going to do a 2-year pilot project, so 2 years from the opening of the first small-scale manufacturer, test it. And we figure after 2 years, if the sky doesn't fall in, it'll be a much easier trick with City Council to open up the zoning code and get that changed. So those are the 3 big things that we've been working on. Super excited, and I just have to say that everything we're doing led directly from our site visit, so it was an invaluable process for us. And there's the website, my website, and our Como Makes website if you'd like more information.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. And the Como Makes website was one of those things where we got on a call together at the beginning of the project and said, you should really have a place where the makers businesses can find you. And then lo and behold, like 2 days later, they had a website. So I think you might win that speed part of it. We are now going to go to Tina Bingham to talk about the work in the Macomb-Vise neighborhood. And Tina, as I said, is the Executive Vice President and Chair of the Macomb-Vise Community Development Corporation. And Tina is going to talk about the work that she's doing in her neighborhood. Tina?
Hello. So our project came kind of in the middle of us implementing our Fresh Soil project with the Kresge Foundation. So the small-scale manufacturing work fit within the context of our food producing. Our Freshfield project's stemmed and was based on the creation of a Creole Arts and Cultural District for our community, as well as using vacant and blighted lots within our community to grow food for the community and maybe turn them into agribusinesses. So we wanted to be able to use the Smart Growth visit to help us explore the options of activating our existing home-based businesses and getting them the proper facilities and the proper insurance and documentation that they need to make sure that they can execute their businesses and get their products into commerce. So as I said before, our district, our project stemmed from a previous project, from another previous project, but it really culminated with the creation of our cultural district for our neighborhood. We, as a part of our Freshfield grant, we created the Creole Arts and Culture District for the Macomb-Visa area, which celebrates all things that are Creole and African American within our community, and highlights the things that are already currently happening within our community, where we have along the Simcoe corridor, which was one of the primary corridors that we focused on, is what I like to call our entertainment district, where we have a lot of nightclubs and not a lot of action and actually daytime activity or workday activity happening on the site. So we wanted to try to focus and see how we can activate different ways along that street as well. But what we learned during our site, well, I think what was confirmed even more than what we learned was that it would be a little bit of a heavier lift to get some things going on Simcoe if we didn't have enough buy-in from the existing property owners. So we're still working on fleshing out better relationships with some of the property owners along Simcoe and possibly exploring, after Alana's suggestion, maybe some joint ventures between co-property owners that can help us develop the type of things that we'd like to see within our community, like a grocery store or a co-op grocery store, maybe a food hall, or even something where there's a shared use of the property where we can help expand an existing corner store and add a shared kitchen as well along the Simcoe corridor. So we're currently exploring a number of different options. But what also was going on, because we were currently in the process of executing a project, we already had a lot of momentum going on around our community house, which for us will be serving as a community. I'm sorry, and this slide is a little bit out of order. I'm talking. But the community house serves as a community resource center for the neighborhood. It was funded by grants by the Lowe's Foundation from both Keep America Beautiful and the Lowe's Foundation, as well as Mid-South Bank. We worked heavily with the city partners, the local Habitat for Humanity here in Lafayette, Project Front Yard, which is our local kind of litter campaign here, and litter and blight and beautification, and the city of Lafayette. So some of the pictures that you see here is actually of our site visit to the community house. It was still in the middle of construction at the time. In the top right-hand corner, you see where we started. The house there's a big hole in the side because there was a big beehive nest in the house. We didn't get any honey, but we got, I think the honey is the bottom picture in the right corner, where we're just about complete. We're about 97% complete with the community house. And we're actually going to be having an event this weekend to celebrate that. But we're really excited about what this can mean for our community, because what's going to be happening there as a programming from our organizational standpoint is all of our community learning initiatives that we have kicked off for our community. So some of those include we hosted after getting our recommendations and after having conversations with Alana, they recommended that we host a leadership training. So this past month, we hosted our first Resident Leadership 101, where we had 7 or 8 residents came together for over 2 days to strengthen their own leadership skills and to help activate them into new roles within the community. There's a lot of projects that are happening. I'm only really highlighting a few, but we have a lot of momentum that's going on in our community, all over the community. So there's plenty of ways that we can activate different ways into small scale. And with this leadership program was actually focused on activating our committee members, the people who are already self-activated into our group, to help them kind of build some of their leadership skills, get more comfortable with talking in front of folks, and just getting to know a little bit more about themselves. We also were in the middle of hosting our business networking sessions and kicking off our Business 101. So what we did was we, during our Kresge grant, is we interviewed a few businesses, and we learned that some of the businesses didn't quite have all the paperwork that they needed to be able to conduct their business in the way that they need to. So we wanted to create a business learning academy that would be able to give those businesses an opportunity, and those local businesses within our community as well. Because like I said before, we have a lot of home-based businesses within our community, and we wanted to make sure that they had the information and the resources that they need to make sure they can grow their business. And as we say, that we wanted to make sure that they're small-scale manufacturing is also really educating them that their businesses are considered small-scale manufacturing. And with a little bit more investment or a little better facility, or if they had the right documentation, they can really take their products to new levels and help build wealth within their family and within the community. And so we're really trying to, push for the community and our residents to really, engage and activate in new ways, and also to, build wealth. But also that we're looking at creating agro-businesses, as I mentioned before, that we'd like to be able to utilize the 200-plus vacant and blighted properties within our current community for some kind of commercial use. So either it being growing vegetables, growing fruits, or be it building a house or a business. We'd like to be able to activate those lots in different ways. So we're using our business learning and networking sessions as a way to connect with different business owners and find out what their needs are, and to figure out how we can plug in to actually get those resources to them that they need. Another project that we have going on that's actually in kind of the middle of construction now is our neighborhood pocket park. It's a musical edible park. It's actually named the Legacy Park on Magnolia. Now this is actually an old slide. I apologize about that. But this park was designed and named by the community. We did a lot of community engagement at the onset of this project to make sure that we were getting it right, and that we celebrated what the community wanted to see, and that we were actually delivering the project that they wanted to see within the community. So we heard a lot about within our Creole Arts and Culture District that we have a lot of musicians that come from our community. I'm not sure how familiar everyone on the line is with Zydeco, but if you ever heard of Clifton Chenier, Buckwheat, Little Buck, those are all people that are Zydeco, I want to say like grandfathers, uncles, and grandmothers who have really helped build our culture here in Lafayette. But if you're not familiar with Zydeco, and if you've ever done the Cupid Shuffle in the last 2, 5, 10 years, Cupid is also from our community as well. So this park is really a way for us to really celebrate all of the musicians and the talent that came from our community, not just in Zydeco, but across the spectrum, and just giving them a place and letting them know that they are recognized, they're loved, and they're appreciated from within our community. The next big thing that's happening is that we have actually engaged the UL architecture students, which is our local university, University of Louisiana at Lafayette. We engaged them in the creation of a design concept for our filling station. On the corner near our community house, we actually own the corner of 12th and South Magnolia. It used to be an old either conical or canal filling station. And we like to see it repurposed into some kind of community use. The idea is that we're going to be creating the homegrown public market. The middle space, the main building that you see in the upper left-hand corner, is the filling station. We like that to be kind of reserved as kind of like a shelled building where restaurants or an office space can be set up, and people can rent that space from us and use it how they see fit. But also in addition to that, we're going to be adding 4 additional stalls to the filling station so that vendors can rent spaces and put their products out in the community and test things out. We have a number of groups that are already kind of lining up for this building, and it hasn't even been designed yet. So we're really excited about the excitement that the community has, and we know, I know we're talking about catalysts, but we know that this project has been a catalyst already just by seeing the work happening on the site. And just by people seeing the progress and the change in what's been happening at the community house, it's really sparked a few more people to say, what's going on over there? How else can I get involved? When is your meeting? So, and that's the type of momentum and that's the type of conversations that we want to have, is that people want to activate and want to get involved in our project. So we have these great student groups. We have 6 groups of students that are creating 6 different designs for the filling station. A lot of them stem with the roots in the community. They cover cross-generational. Their concepts are very out there, I think, but I think it'll be something once we actually get to see them on Saturday that the community will really rally behind and see, and hopefully we'll be able to get some more buy-in from the community as well with this project, and them knowing that they had a hand in the ownership of them actually designing this project as well, or helping to design it. And to wrap up just really quickly, as I alluded to before, that we are this weekend, if anyone on this call is in the Lafayette, Louisiana area or feels like taking a flight, we'll welcome you as well. But we're hosting our Reimagine MCD Fest. This is the 3rd annual Reimagine MCD Fest that we've hosted in our community. It's a way that we invite the community in to give us ideas and to continue the conversation going about different areas in our community. So in previous years, we did the Better Block Simcoe, which was our first Reimagine MCD Fest. And then last year we did Reimagine Hyman Park and Reimagine Hyman Park and the Pocket Park. And we had bands and stage and all of that good stuff set up at each location. Well, this year we're going to be celebrating the grand opening of our community house, which will be finally completed. And also welcoming the community to help us vote and decide on the designs for our filling station. So we're really excited to see what happens, really excited for the weekend. That's why we're all crazy over here this week. But we're very excited for the progress that we've been making with our grants and with our project and since our Smart Growth visit. And we're really excited to see the progress and what happens and give y'all a report later. So just to close out just a little bit, this is my contact information. If anyone has any questions, I have multiple emails and multiple phone numbers, but these are the only ones that y'all get for today. But thank y'all so much for listening to me, and if you have any questions, I'm open to hearing.
Oh, fantastic, Tina. Thank you so much, and I am so excited to see that community house come to life. I feel like we were there just at the cusp of everything, and I know that you were wearing 17 different hats to make this possible, which is probably one common denominator you all have on this call. We're going to take a few questions in the time that we have left. You know, one of the things that is really important to think about, and you each brought this up in different ways, is about how we do this purposefully, that direct community engagement, but also that opportunity for people to see something happen on a site and how much that means to see something in the physical sense of the here and now come to life, or some event and some kind of programming. So the first question is, you know, I would love to just go back to each of you and just talk about, from your opinion, really, your perspective of how much of an impact it made for people to see something happen in real life, in bricks and mortar, in terms of building momentum for more engagement. And Tina, I'll start with you, and then we'll go back through. If you could each give me some brief thoughts about that. Tina, are you there? If you are, I can't hear you. Okay, we'll come back to Tina. Carrie.
So the one thing that we did that was right out there to show people that something was happening was the pop-up park. And it was amazing. It was amazing because the community came together. So every person that helped build the park went and told their friends about it. It also gave us a focal point. So we got a lot of people coming to the street who hadn't been to the street in a while. And it was an opportunity to talk to new folks about what our plans were, what our goals were for makers and small-scale manufacturing. So it was so valuable. And, you know, you drive by now and it's like someone opened a box of Crayola crayons on the street. The street was so gray and boring, and now it's just bright and happy, or at least one lot is. So there's nothing more important, I think, than a symbolic build like that.
Excellent. Thank you, Carrie. Jim and Terrence, you guys have the summit that you've been creating and really partnering on and really purposefully highlighting makers of color and people from immigrant communities as part of that, really creating a visible stamp of presence. Can you talk about the impact that had?
Well, I'll take a quick stab at that, but I think the two things that absolutely stands out is being intentional and being laser focused. I think those two combinations of those two phrases is kind of what has built the momentum, and I wholeheartedly think that you need to start somewhere, and where you start, I think the catalyst begins there, and I think we've just been able to, been fortunate to have a more inclusive buy-in from our community overall, and I think that's been very helpful to getting buy-in on the front end. Obviously, you can't be all things to all people, but certainly the points that Jim made earlier about being intentional about diversity and inclusion for our summit, for example, made a heck of a difference in terms of the outcome and just the optics of the whole summit itself. And it's kind of like breathing new life into something that we've been doing for years now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Tina, coming at you, I mean, you guys have had, you're obviously serving a very important leadership role in a community that has seen a lot of neglect and disinvestment for a long time. Getting the investment not only in new homes that you guys have been building with Habitat, but also in the community house in particular as this epicenter of energy. What kind of impact do you see that having on people's interest in being engaged and people sort of believing that something is possible?
Well, I think it's had like an incredible impact so far. I think I was telling someone earlier that like even when we started construction, throughout the entire construction process, I couldn't go to the site one time without having a conversation with someone about what we were doing and why we were doing it. So if anything, it has generated a lot of conversation, and it does help that we have our councilman, who has been our all-star, one of our all-star champions for the last decade. Has a talk show, and he talks about it all the time, and he's excited about the community house. So he has a lot of people who just on his mention have passed by the community house and have stopped by and just had conversations. So if anything, it's gotten the community thinking and talking about what could be, and even getting more people saying that they want community houses as well in their neighborhood. So I think it's really exciting to see that type of change and that catalyst that's happening in our community, even if it's just taking a vacant house, a house that just was sitting vacant and blighted for decades, and converting it into something that the community can use, and then them actually being able to see it and being able to be on that lot that they hadn't been able to be on in years. You know, it says a lot.
I think that's fantastic, and I do think that when people see that somebody else believes in this vision, it really makes it possible for them to believe in it too. We have time really only for one other question, and I wanted to talk a little bit. This is a really big question, so and it's going to be hard to answer in brief. But the politics of making changes. The politics of making changes is hard. Zoning code changes, getting investment from foundations or local community entities, the decision-making process, and who controls the purse strings. All of those things are different forms of politics. I'd love to hear from you guys briefly about one thing that made the biggest difference for you guys about being successful about one of those pieces. Whoever wants to go.
Well, I can start on something like that. Our street has reached rock bottom. So a friend of mine pointed out that we are the development equivalent to puppies. So we had a lot of people already wanting to see change on the street. And the fact that we have so many people talking about the small-scale manufacturing program that we're doing, that level of excitement and community support and community-involved planning is making it so much easier to go to the city and say, you're doing something that you've ignored. We have a lot of people excited about this. So we've just got so many things working for us now. And the public support and public empathy is getting the job done for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. Anybody else want to mention one thing that made a big difference for you and your success in getting buy-in?
I want to say just, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dina.
Go ahead. Go.
Well, I think the importance of relationships, I think it's very important, because even when there's no funding available, the resources from a partner or from, some random stranger can really make the difference in making sure that your projects get off the ground and or receive funding. Sometimes a little bit of legwork and smiling and some honey kind of helps.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I would echo both of those. I would also add for us, we had support from the very top. Our mayor was an incredibly strong advocate of what we were trying to do, showed up for everything, invested in it, and made sure that the rest of the administration was invested in it as well. And part of what was really, I think, transformative for her was that she created a Mayor's Maker Council and then gave agency to the makers in the community to tell her what to do. And then she listened and made it happen. And so I think that's been a testament to her leadership and also the way that the city has responded.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. And with that, we're going to draw to a close. Jerry, all you.
Thanks, Alana, and thanks for doing the Q&A, and thank you so much to our speakers for joining us. We did record this webinar, and we'll be posting it on our website, smartgrowthamerica.org, in about a week with a little recap. And also, we did a webinar a few weeks ago about zoning for the maker economy, and that's also posted on our website. And it focused on zoning and small-scale manufacturing and how the two can work together really well. So again, thank you so much of all of our speakers, and thank you all for joining us, and have a great afternoon. Take care, everyone.